In the early hours of a crisp autumn morning in 1972, Toronto was still awakening to what would become one of the most audacious heists in Canadian criminal history. The city, which had been rapidly transforming from a conservative provincial capital into a cosmopolitan metropolis, was about to witness a crime that would capture the imagination of the public and challenge the capabilities of law enforcement in ways previously unimaginable. The target was not a bank vault or a jewelry store, but something far more ambitious and dangerous: a Brinks armored truck carrying what would amount to over $1.2 million in cash and negotiable securities. A sum that represented an astronomical fortune in $1,972, equivalent to several million in today's currency. The Brinks Incorporated company had established itself as the gold standard of armored car services since its founding. In Chicago in 1859 by Washington Perry Brinks, by the 1970s, Brinks trucks had become synonymous with maximum security transportation. Their distinctive armored vehicles, a common sight on the streets of major North American cities, as they ferried valuable cargo between banks, businesses, and financial institutions. The company's reputation had been built on an image of invincibility, with their heavily armored trucks, trained guards, and sophisticated security protocols designed to deter even the most determined criminals. However, this reputation would be put to the ultimate test on the streets of Toronto by a group of men who had spent months, perhaps years, planning what they believed would be the perfect crime. Armored car robberies were not entirely unprecedented in North American criminal history, though they remained relatively rare due to the extraordinary risks involved and the sophisticated security measures employed by companies like Brinks. One of the most famous previous incidents had occurred in Boston in 1950, when a gang of 11 men had pulled off what became known as the Great Brinks Robbery, stealing over $2.7 million from the company's North Terminal garage. That heist had required 18 months of meticulous planning, with the criminals studying guard routines, obtaining duplicate keys, and even practicing their entry techniques until they could execute the robbery in a matter of minutes. The Boston robbery had become legendary in criminal circles, not only for the enormous sum stolen, but for the sophisticated planning and execution that allowed the perpetrators to remain at large for several years. The Toronto operation, while different in its approach, demonstrated a similar level of planning and audacity. The perpetrators had clearly conducted extensive surveillance of Brinks operations in the city, studying routes, timing, guard procedures, and the various vulnerabilities that might be exploited. Unlike bank robberies, which typically involved confronting security personnel in a controlled environment, attacking an armored truck required criminals to operate in public spaces with multiple escape routes, contingency plans, and the ability to overcome heavily armed and trained security guards. The logistics alone were staggering: coordinating multiple vehicles, ensuring clear escape routes, neutralizing communication systems, and executing the robbery quickly enough to avoid law enforcement response, while thoroughly enough to maximize the take. On the morning of the heist, the Brinks truck was following its regular route through Toronto, its crew unaware that they had been marked for months by criminals who knew their every move. The armored vehicle, weighing several tons and designed to withstand small arms fire and even explosive attacks, represented the pinnacle of mobile security technology available in the early 1970s. Its crew consisted of highly trained guards, armed and equipped with communication devices that could summon immediate police response in the event of an emergency. However, the perpetrators had anticipated these security measures and had developed a plan that would neutralize the truck's advantages while maximizing their own tactical superiority through superior numbers, firepower, and the element of surprise. The actual robbery unfolded with military precision, suggesting that at least some of the perpetrators may have had experience in armed conflict or professional training in tactical operations. Using multiple vehicles to box in the armored truck, the criminals forced it to stop in a location they had carefully chosen for its isolation and multiple escape routes. Armed with high-powered weapons and operating with the kind of coordinated efficiency that spoke to extensive rehearsal, they quickly overwhelmed the Brinks guards before they could mount an effective defense or summon help. The speed and violence of the attack left the security personnel with little choice but to comply with the robbers' demands, prioritizing their own survival and that of any bystanders over the protection of the cargo they had been hired to guard. The criminals escaped with over $1.2 million in cash, and negotiable securities represented not just a massive financial loss, but a significant blow to the reputation of armored car security throughout Canada. The negotiable securities, which included stocks, bonds, and other financial instruments that could theoretically be converted to cash, actually represented a double-edged sword for the thieves. While these instruments significantly increased the total value of their haul, they also created a paper trail that would make them extremely difficult to convert to usable currency without detection. Experienced criminals understood that negotiable securities, unlike cash, required sophisticated networks of financial contacts and considerable expertise to monetize without attracting law enforcement attention. The investigation that followed the robbery became one of the most intensive manhunts in Canadian criminal history, involving not only local Toronto police, but also the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and various federal agencies. Concerned with the interstate transportation of the stolen securities, law enforcement officials recognized that they were dealing with a highly sophisticated criminal organization, one that had demonstrated both the planning capability to execute such a complex operation and the resources to acquire military-grade weapons and coordination. The investigation techniques employed included traditional detective work, surveillance of known criminal associates, monitoring of financial institutions for attempts to cash the stolen securities, and coordination with American law enforcement agencies who might encounter the perpetrators or the stolen goods. The eventual capture of several of the perpetrators demonstrated both the thoroughness of the police investigation and the ultimate difficulty of successfully completing such an ambitious criminal enterprise. Despite their careful planning and professional execution of the robbery itself, the criminals had underestimated the challenges involved in successfully laundering such an enormous sum, particularly the negotiable securities that comprised a significant portion of their haul. Law enforcement agencies had placed monitoring systems on financial institutions throughout North America, making it virtually impossible for the criminals to convert their stolen securities without detection. Additionally, the high-profile nature of the crime had generated enormous media attention, making it difficult for the perpetrators to maintain the low profile necessary for successfully enjoying the fruits of their criminal enterprise. The Brinks robbery of 1972 ultimately became a landmark case in Canadian criminal history, not only because of the enormous sum involved, but because of the sophisticated planning and execution that it represented. The case highlighted the evolving nature of organized crime in Canada, demonstrating that criminal enterprises had become increasingly professional and ambitious in their scope and methods. For law enforcement, the robbery served as a wake-up call about the need for enhanced security measures and improved coordination between various agencies responsible for investigating major crimes. The incident also marked a turning point in armored car security protocols, leading to significant changes in routes, procedures, and security measures that would make similar robberies much more difficult to execute in the future. Though it also established a template that would inspire other ambitious criminals to attempt their own versions of the perfect crime. The 1972 Brinks robbery in Toronto stands as a testament to both the audacity of criminal ambition and the inevitable triumph of methodical police work over even the most carefully planned heists. While the perpetrators demonstrated remarkable skill in executing their daring daylight robbery, their downfall came from the very thing that made their crime so spectacular. The sheer scale of their ambitions made it impossible to quietly enjoy their ill-gotten gains. The case became a defining moment in Canadian criminal history, illustrating how modern organized crime had evolved beyond simple smash-and-grab operations into sophisticated enterprises that required military-level planning and coordination. Yet it also proved that no matter how clever the criminals or how perfect their plan might seem, the combination of dedicated law enforcement, advanced investigative techniques, and the criminals' own human weaknesses would eventually bring them to justice. As we close this incredible chapter of Toronto's criminal past, we see how the city's transformation, from a sleepy provincial capital into a major metropolitan center, brought with it both opportunities and challenges that would define the modern Canadian urban experience. The Brinks robbery represented not just a crime, but a milestone in the ongoing cat-and-mouse game between increasingly sophisticated criminals and the law enforcement agencies determined to stop them. If you found this tale of planning, execution, and ultimate justice as gripping as we did, make sure to hit that like button and let us know in the comments what other legendary Canadian heists and criminal cases you would like us to explore next. Do not forget to subscribe to West is Best for more incredible true crime stories from across the Great White North that you will not find anywhere else. And remember to ring that notification bell so you never miss our latest deep dives into the fascinating and sometimes dark corners of Canadian history. because when it comes to untold stories from coast to coast, West is best.